So do you think that mothers sometimes enable this dynamic just out of love? And what are we creating with that for the future generation?
So I do in some instances, but I think we're talking about two different categories of people. I think there may be people whose children are just there gaming, smoking weed, doing whatever, doing the dishes, whatever that the what do you call them, hub sons. There may truly be some there, but and I think that's a totally different aspect from people whose children move back home for other reasons. So I think that's the first thing to clarify. You can't call them both the same because they're not really the same. For example, one thing I think we need to not disregard is the pandemic was real. We got to remember that there was a whole generation of kids that were either like in high school or had just gone to college, that are really even still dealing with some of that trauma. I think about my own son who was, just starting, had just gotten his first job during the pandemic. He was in auto sales, doing very well. I mean, when you sell somebody a car and then they turn around and give you a tip after you sold them a car, I mean, you're doing something right. But then all of a sudden, something happens in the world and I no longer have a job. What did I do wrong? What? I thought I was doing good. What's going on? I can't go outside. So it's a lot of people that are still dealing with that. That wasn't really that long ago. That would mean this is only 2025. So a lot of that for kids that had grown up, in this free world, able to go where they want, do what they want, when they want. And now they've experienced this life altering thing. For some of them, it may be a matter of trying to get themselves together mentally. Okay. And I'm not saying that that's, the case in my family. It could very well be, but we got to consider that everybody's situation is not the same. And then again, does it really make sense for us to send our kids out into this world when you're making $3,000 a month, but it's costing you, 2,000 of it in rent? You haven't paid for any utilities, any insurances, any other expenses, and you've spent like 2/3 of your income and you're giving it to someone else. How do you create wealth in that? How do you save up 20% to put down to become a homeowner in that type of situation? So that's the part of the conversation I think we need to think about as well.
I think so too. I mean, there's a lot of avenues that we need to go down. I actually have sold to many families that did buy as families, and then what they did is they all put their money into a pool so that the next person who got their turn to buy their house, they all put together for that person to get their own home, and then that person would probably move in his sister or a brother or whatever, and then they would save up again, so that would push them off into their own home ownership. So, Marlo, could this trend actually help build generational wealth?
If the person is not just waiting on their parents to die. I mean, I think that the lady in the video that we just showed, to me, this is the result of helicopter parenting, right? We stopped talking about helicopter parenting where, every moment of the child's day was scheduled and the parent was overly involved in everything, right? And we see this now. I work in a managerial position. I haven't experienced it myself, fingers crossed, but I've heard of people whose parents have been present on job interviews, whether they came with or whether they were there in the background on Zoom and giving prompts, right?